Hi everybody, Richard Tromans here from Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we are honoured to have with us Noah Waisberg, the CEO and co-founder of Kira Systems, a company that you all know very well, I am sure. But perhaps one of the things that you don't know so much about is the journey that Noah has been through and is still going through as the company grows and expands. And I thought it'd be really interesting to have him on the show. Hi Noah.
Hey, Richard. Good to see you. It'd be much better to see you in person, but then I guess we couldn't have this virtual audience with us if that was so.
That's true. That's true indeed. And to then ask Noah a little bit about the journey that he's been on. And I thought we will go down memory lane to begin with, and then we'll look at where we are now and perhaps a few thoughts about the future. So to start off with, and I think a lot of people probably don't actually know how it all started. How did Kira begin?
Well, it's easier to answer that question if I just talk about what I was doing before Kira. So I was a mergers and acquisitions lawyer at Weil Gotshal in New York, and I really liked the job, right? Like it was interesting. I had smart colleagues. I was decently paid. Like I think New York's a pretty cool place to live when you're childless in your sort of 20s, early 30s. But I kept having this feeling that I spent huge amounts of time doing work that it felt like I shouldn't be doing, right? Where I wasn't that good at it, or as I got more senior, the people that I was supervising weren't that good at it. They hated it. Clients didn't really like paying for it. And it was terribly expensive, right? Like back then we were talking about work that was $300 an hour US for the most junior lawyers, right? And I think that's only gone up. And when I talk to friends at other firms, like this isn't to call out Weil at all, which I think was like pretty excellent as far as the quality of law firm environments, but it seemed very unsustainable to me. And it also was unsustainable for me. Like it wasn't what I felt like doing for the rest of my life. And so in summer 2010, like June 2010, I quit and I just sat and thought for about 6 months. And I thought about whether I should get a job at an existing business because I felt like I still had quite a lot to learn, or whether I should start a new business. And with starting a new business, I just kept thinking about this idea that there seemed like so much opportunity to do corporate law better. And so I spent 6 months thinking through different ideas of like, what do corporate lawyers do and how could it be done better? And I started thinking about a couple ideas that have actually turned into other people have built into companies. But they didn't seem like the right thing for me. They didn't excite me enough. And then I started thinking about contract review and due diligence at the time. And I realized that it kind of fit the theory very well, that that it was a huge time suck, right? Like it was literally like one of the number one tasks of junior corporate lawyers, certainly in M&A, but also like in banking, securities, real estate, spent vast amounts of time looking through contracts and trying to pull information out of them, number one. Number two, even at the best firms in the world, they made mistakes at that work. But then third, they were often looking for the same things over and over again. And because of that, thought there was this opportunity to maybe automate that work. And so back in January 2010, so it did take me about 6 months to get to this, I started looking through and trying to find people who were maybe a technical person who could work with me. And I sort of reached out to my network. A lot of my network were other lawyers or consultants or like accountants, or they worked at private equity funds or that kind of thing. But I had been in a PhD program in political science before going to law school. And a few of my friends from there happened to be professors at very technical schools. And one of them was a professor at the University of Waterloo, which is like the MIT of Canada. And she had someone like literally in her knitting circle who was in the comp sci PhD program there, just finished the comp sci PhD program there. And this lady, who's now like an assistant professor somewhere, I believe, was off to work on the Human Genome Project, but she introduced me to a few of her friends, and I ended up at like a Starbucks with my sort of current co-founder, Alex, and a few other comp sci PhDs from Waterloo, explaining the idea. Alex thought I sort of clicked really well with Alex, and like he seemed smart to me, and we ended up sort of setting to work on this problem that Alex and the other comp sci PhDs all thought wasn't really that hard, that you could sort of apply the state of the art to it and have a working system in kind of 4 months or something like that. And so then we reflected on, should we even raise money? And we're like, well, it'll take us 6 months to raise money, and only 4 months to build the software. And let's just build the software, and then after that, we can raise money. And that turned out to be well off. 6 months later, our software did not work at all. Really, it was like quite very inaccurate, and we just realized we had no chance of raising money at all at that point, because we weren't sure if we had 6 more months or 10 years left. So we just kept pushing away after that, and eventually got the software to work.
And is it right that Kira Systems was not the very first name that you came up with?
Oh yeah, and we were, from our founding in January 2011 until about March 2015, we were called Diligence Engine, because we were entirely focused on helping people do due diligence, and like that's what we were thinking about. Really, that name. Like I may have talents in software business, but like naming things is not one of those talents. As we kind of went along, as it got to be 2013, 2014, 2015, we would finish our demos and people would see the software and they'd say like, huh, like that's cool, but like I could see using that outside of diligence. Like you could use that for contract management. You could use that for other things. Like one of our largest clients was a Big Four firm using the software around audit at the time. And so we realized that, our company tagline was basically Diligence Engine. We're not just for diligence. And we thought that was kind of like that it made sense to change our name before we got too big. And so we went on a long quest that I could describe some other time maybe, for a new name, and came up with Kira, which is Sanskrit for ray of light. And we thought that really encapsulated what we were trying to express, that we could help bring focus to the right spots in your contracts and documents over time, and change the name. And happily, I think we did it at just the right moment when we got a bit of attention around the name change, but not enough people had heard of us that it was problematic. And I think now many people forget that we were Diligence Engine. If I was in at the office, I could show you some old Diligence Engine gear.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about this next stage, and I think it's another thing that I think everyone will be very interested to hear about, which is the experience of going from an associate to a startup where it's just a small group of people. It's exciting. The future is, who knows? Everything. Every single day is just wow. To suddenly, we've got revenue, we've got staff, we have a premises, we have all kinds of responsibilities. Well, you have all kinds of responsibilities. I mean, let's just talk about the managerial things. I think a lot of people getting into legal tech, and perhaps who are still at relatively small startups, they're not necessarily equipped with all the skills. And I just thought, what skills did you have that as you were going through this as a manager, as a leader, you thought, wow, I actually know how to do this almost, naturally I know. And what were the things where you came across things and thought, wow, I've got no idea how to do this?
Well, I think where I was really good was in terms of just understanding our users really well, right? Like I understood their pain, and I understood how to communicate with them and what would work and how to build credibility with them. And I think that was and remains an exceptionally important thing for me. Like for me, I still spend, at normal times, I would spend a huge portion of my time out in the field connecting with our customers, connecting with our prospects, connecting with our team. The other thing that I had really well was like a vision for what we felt like building, right? Like I knew what we felt like building, and I think I was able to convey that to others. Like my communication skills were good. The third thing that I think being in big law, there are a lot of useful things you pick up in big law, right? Like thoroughness and attention to detail, which is super, super, super important still, even in my world. And an ability to write lucidly. Like one of the pleasures you get going to good law schools and then working at a good firm is like you have a ton of people criticizing your production of content, right? Like you really, at while we were very much centered on this, like it was not the 80-20 rule, right? Like it was, you put as much effort into doing something to make it perfect as you could. And it means for me, like when I need to write something and have it be perfect or close to perfect, I can, not necessarily like I'm ever perfect, but I can get stuff really good. So I think there were a lot of useful things that I had that still help me today, that just like the early foundation in my job really, I think, prepared me well to do other stuff. It's a lot of stuff I had to learn too, like, still today, I think I work with some people who are much better people managers than I am, right? They're just like really, really, really great at getting the most out of people. And I think that is something that, and it's not trivial to figure out how to do that and do it right. I think I've been really lucky over the time at Cure Systems. Like one of the things that's propelled us forward is we have had some great people and some people who started out as really good and like have really stepped up a bunch. And I don't know that I can attribute that growth in these people to me. Like I think they did it. But I work with some people who I think are a lot better at systematically doing that, and that's definitely a skill set that I think I'm probably better at it now than I was a decade ago, but I still have a lot of room to grow. I think another thing, just on the people front again, is just like is hiring, where like you really like again so much success I would attribute to really great hires. And spots where we've kind of faltered, I would attribute to just not being as good at hiring as we could be. And I think that's still a work in progress. Like, I think we've gotten better at it. I certainly could do it better now, but I still have, I'm sure I'm making mistakes now. I hope not. I think a lot of people on our team right now are terrific. But
what have been the biggest challenges along the road for you personally? Running.
So I think there's different challenges at different times in the business. Like for the first, from January 2011, like we did not have revenue, like $0 in revenue, like literally $0 in revenue from January 2011 when we started until November 2014, right? And you're sitting there, and I had like my first kid during that period. And I'd sort of given up this high-paying job, and you're wondering, is it ever going to get good, right? Or am I just going to have given up this fancy job and spent like 3 years and a bunch of money doing this thing that will never work? And so that was a really hard time in one way. Can you just hold on 1 second? Hardest part in the initial phase was just number one, getting our software to work, and number two, sort of dealing with the implications of it not working and us not getting people to pay us money, right? Like for the first, we had $0 revenue from January 2011 until November 2013. And that's like a really hard thing, right? Because I've given up this sort of well-paying job, I had my first child over that stretch, and just you don't know if it's going to work out. And I still feel very lucky that it did work out for us, right? Like it might not have, I might have ended up coming out very differently than I did. And I think going through it, you sort of don't know that there's this good outcome on the other side. And I think that's like always inevitably how it is when you're going through something tough, right? Like sometimes it doesn't end well. It happened to for us, but like even now, if you're asking me if you should sort of go and start a legal tech company, like I don't know. Like the expected value is probably a lot better staying as a lawyer, even though it can work out very well. And I've learned a lot of useful stuff along the way, and it's been valuable, even if it hadn't worked out as a sort of job for me. After we got going, I think some of the strains are, a lot of the strains are just around people, right? Where you have like, you hire people who are like nice, good people, but it's just like, you know, maybe they're not working as well as they need to with the team. Maybe they're not working as well as they need to individually. Maybe they just like think about things in a philosophically different way. Like, you know, one is thinking more about long term, one is thinking more about short term. And it just like, it causes a lot of conflict, and it can be pretty unfun when that happens. And so I think a lot of the biggest challenges right now are around that, and around just trying to make sure that we kind of meet our potential. Like I think Curious Systems has amazing potential, and I hope we can kind of do it as well as it can be done. And I'm always unsure if we're doing that. Like we try our best, but it's hard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, it's amazing, really, isn't it? That you know, you didn't have any revenue for several years, and I think a lot of startups probably would have given up by then, but you kept going, and of course, you know, you have the determination to keep going, and you were right to do that. And I mean, how many people approximately are you now?
We're at like 230, 240 or so.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, it's gone up since I last did a count. Wow.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of people.
Oh. So, well, let's two last questions. A positive one and then a forward-looking one. What has been, or what have been your greatest sort of moments of pride? I'm sure there have been many moments have been positive that have punctuated your journey, but can you just think of a couple where you felt, yeah, you know, we've done it.
It really is a journey. So like, I don't know that there's any individual moment where I'm like, yes, right? But there's some good ones, like when we signed some big contracts, that's been pretty happy moments. But I think actually it's executing on it. Like it's hearing the thing that probably consistently makes me the happiest is when I'm able to go and talk to our customers and hear how they've been able to do work differently and better because of the software. So I think that gives me a lot of pride. The other thing that gives me a lot of pride is just like the amount of usage. Like this is something where a decade ago, I had this idea that lawyers should be reviewing contracts using our software. Now, at 11 of the 12 top 12 UK firms by revenue, they use our software to do that work, right? At 7 of the Vault 10 or 7 of the AmLaw 10 firms, they use our software to do that work. In Toronto, where I am right now, 5 of the 7 sisters firms, they use our software to do that work. And it's really cool to sort of step back and think about that impact as well. So to think about the overall impact that people do this work that like has been done a certain way for a long time, and now they're doing it better thanks to something that we did is super cool. And then hearing their stories about how it like changes things, or you know, they were able to do something that they couldn't before, or what we sort of pitched them on came to reality, like that's really cool. And then the third thing is just seeing some of the people that I've worked with over the years and seeing how they've developed, I find very heartening as well. And I think it's probably one of the things that will give me a lot of joy in the decades to come, right? I hope we'll be seeing some of them just go on and do great things of their own.
Absolutely. Well, brings us to the last question, thinking about the future. So, I mean, obviously, for everybody, this year has been not great, to put it politely. What happens now? I mean, how do you get through this? And then, as much as you can share, what happens next? Because you've had this fantastic 10-year journey. What happens next?
I think we still feel like we have a lot left to do, that we haven't achieved anywhere close to what, like we're starting to get closer to the point where we can start to do some pretty cool stuff, but we still feel, I think, very early on in the journey of what's possible for our team and our software, and we'll see. Like, we'll just see if we're able to execute on some of that stuff or not. But I think there is a lot more that we're going to see over the coming decades in the contract analysis software space, and I think there's more that we can contribute to that. So,
and one last question. I mean, who knows in terms of corporate structure, investors, and all of that, that maybe down the road. But do you intend to stay the CEO for the foreseeable future, and stay at the helm?
I think so. I don't know. Like, there's a point. This is a very hard job. Like, it legitimately is a really hard and almost punishing job at times, right? Like, during normal times, I would be traveling. Toronto may seem like a hotbed of customer usage of contract analysis software, but like, in fact, I'm almost always traveling a ton. It's just like a very busy, hard life. And I probably work unsustainably hard at it. The COVID time, while it's been very busy and hard in other ways, has been at least a bit of a break from travel. But I don't know. I'm in no rush to get another job, but I expect someday I don't know that this is the last thing I'll ever do. Like, I don't hope to die in the captain's chair or something like that, but I'm in no rush to get out of this. It's been good. And like, I've appreciated this market too. Like, one of the things that I didn't kind of appreciate is, like, if you get into legal tech, like, it becomes your business, right? Like, this is my industry now, and I know all sorts of people, right? Like, like, if I saw you, like, we would have a friendly lunch together, right? And I think some of those relationships are really nice, and just something that I enjoy very much, as well as the relationships on our team and the like. So while there are times when this job is very hard, I'm in no rush to leave it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Noah. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show, and good luck for the next 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you.